Hello, so I am actually going to be talking a little softly in this video because my roommates are actually home, but I think that they might be asleep. I'm not sure. Anyways, so I feel like this is a topic that I have probably touched on before, but not in this way. So, there we go. So, the thing is the topic, by the way, is like prisons and how we treat criminals and the whole prison system as a whole, and just plain how ineffective it is. Now, I'm obviously not the first person to talk about this, and if you look for it, you can find all sorts of information about how terrible it is, except it's still around. Why? And for those of you who aren't aware, here is what I'm going to be talking about. Except a big reason, like if we look at sociological and psychological experiments that have been done in the past, and just the way things happen in actual real life situations nowadays, and compile all that information, then we find that our current prison system isn't doing anything to make criminals stop committing crime. In fact, it's encouraging criminal mentalities and behaviors. Not only that, the people who end up in there for very minor things could end up easily and quickly escalating to becoming much worse. And even those who are in there for no crimes at all and falsely accused and whatnot are oftentimes, get turned into criminals. Because let's take a look at the one of the most relevant experiments to this situation, the Stanford prison experiment back in the 70s. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but it got cut short at 6 days because of how quickly it descended into chaos. And none of these people involved were criminals whatsoever. In fact, they had psychological evaluations, and out of 70 volunteers, 24 were chosen for their mental stability. And yet, they still committed, they still all descended into madness, and there was chaos and cruelties performed and everything else. But interestingly enough, it wasn't the prisoners who were being horrifyingly terrible. It was the prison guards. So there's another issue, is that you have these horrible human beings who don't deserve to have freedom, having complete control over minor criminals who may not, or people who may not have committed a single crime in their lives. And if we look at what crime is in the first place, I mean, some crimes, yes, I totally agree with, and are pretty common sense, like don't, when it comes to hurting someone else, or, robbing someone or whatever. But some other crimes are really just so situational or sociological, and we only think they're wrong because we've been taught that it's wrong, like marijuana. You could have someone in jail for doing marijuana. Marijuana doesn't breed violence. Marijuana breeds passivity, if anything, because it just makes you so fucking mellow, right? So you have these people who could be total pacifists in every aspect of their lives, but they decided to do some marijuana to calm down. They got caught and they got sent to jail, and now they are in a horrifying situation. And you end up, when you're in situations like that, you end up having to learn survival skills. And it's us versus them, and it's I'll do anything to survive, and the system doesn't care. So other people don't care, always looking out for number one, because that's the only way you can survive those types of situations a lot of the time. And here's the thing, while in the prison situation, the 24 people, 12 prisoners, 12 guards, they were horrifying. But as soon as they got out, they were fine. So you might be thinking, well, why is this relevant? The experiment only lasted 6 days, and the people who went in there were specifically chosen for their emotional and mental stability. What about when you have people who are mentally ill, which is the case for pretty much all drug addicts? Also, you have people in jail who are just mentally ill, and that's pretty much their crime, because their mental illness caused them to become a threat to themselves or others, you know, because maybe they're having a flashback with PTSD, or maybe so they might have been having a PTSD flashback, or they might have been having a panic attack and they were inconsolable, or they were you know, suicidally depressed, or whatever, or just their mental illness was causing them to be scared. And anyone who knows anything about human and animal behavior, a living thing is at its most dangerous when it's scared, because it's unpredictable and it's going to do anything it can to get out of that terrifying situation. So if you don't know how to properly approach these things, and you have people calling the cops on them, and they're just like, oh, look at this crazed maniac, we gotta, you know, take them down and everything and stop them from being a crazed maniac, and they end up being violent to this terrified person. The person's gonna react violently to try and defend themselves, or their loved ones, or whatever that they perceive needs protection from their perceived threat, which may or may not be a threat, but honestly, the way they often handle it, especially in the States. So and I'll link a video about John Oliver talking about the subject, because I think he covers it a lot better than I am right now. But basically, so you have these people who aren't at that same mental stability that the people in the prison, the Stanford prison experiment are, and some people, especially if you have susceptibility to genetic predisposition, to PTSD, and you end up in a traumatic situation like this sort of environment that prisons breed, then you're just worsening their mental condition, meaning that the thing that got them there is only going to get worse, and now they have this mentality that they can't trust anyone and that they have to do whatever they can to survive. And a terrified person doing whatever they can to survive is not a safe person. So what do I suggest instead? You might be asking at this point. It's like, well, fine, if this doesn't work so bad, then what do you recommend, huh? Got a lot of people with that kind of attitude. But instead of putting them in situations which is violence and self-serving, and that's the sort of like situations that teach them to be violent and self-serving, why not have them give back to the community and put them in situations where they have to learn to care about someone or something else? I've heard of prisons having these, you know, dogs that get surrendered to shelters for behavioral issues, and having the prisoners responsible for training them and you know, helping with their rehabilitation, so that they could go from being maybe a violent dog to, or you know, a dog who's so anxious that anytime someone approaches them that they'll like bite them or whatever, because of whatever traumas that the dog has experienced, and then get them to the point of being able to live in a family again. And while they're doing that, the dog isn't taking up all that space in shelters, which are completely overrun as it is, especially since the economy fell and there were so many people being evicted and they can't keep their pets and all this other stuff. So shelters are completely, you know, overwhelmed at the moment. So that gives that, or have them volunteer, you know, if they, you know, like evaluate how they are, but volunteer with seniors, because seniors severely need care that they're not getting, because there are so many seniors now and not enough people to take care of them, and nobody wants to take care of them. So, you know, have them volunteer at old person homes, and, you know, you can put ankle bracelets and have them supervised and whatnot. So, you know, they're having to contribute to society, and they're having to take care of something, especially that's so important, is having them care about something other than themselves. And especially if they are in there for drugs, because pretty much all drug addicts have suffered some sort of trauma in their life, or are mentally ill in some way, shape, or form, because of things like, why do you do drugs? Because you need to escape, or because there's just so much emotional pain in your life that you can't endure it. So they turn to drugs, and because they've actually done experiments where they like look at how addictive drugs are, but they realized that the rats that they were experimenting on were alone. But once they gave the rats community and plenty of room to run around, instead of having that small little cage with no entertainment, nothing to stimulate their minds, and no socialization, they would just have the drugs to the point of dying, dying of starvation, because it was either, you know, like they would, you know, press the button for food or press the button for the drugs, and they would just constantly be pressing the drug button because their life is so fucking miserable that they just want release from that pain. But once they switched it up and they got a rat addicted to the drugs, and then they took them from that desolate situation and put them in a great big cage with lots of toys and lots of other rats to play with, they kicked the habit every single time. Really quickly too. Almost immediately afterwards they got put into that, bam, started recovery. So it really is about recovering the mind, so that because the drug addiction isn't the problem, it's a symptom of the problem. So if you want to stop the drug addiction, you got to stop the thing that's causing them to turn to drugs for release. So if you're giving them a purpose in life and making them feel like they're doing something that matters, and that somebody actually looks forward to seeing them because they're talking with the old people who are lonely as hell, or the dog gets so excited to see the person who's helping them out and everything else. And that's why certain prisons that have tested out these experiments have had like crime rates in that area drop, and you've had way higher rates of actual effective rehabilitation and everything else. And it's just fucking psychology, because you might want to dehumanize and dissociate from prisoners because you want to separate yourself from criminals, right? Because I'm not a criminal, they're criminals. You want to separate yourself from them, so you don't want to think about how you would feel in their shoes and how to help them. But the thing is that they're still human beings. And when you get down to it, we all have the same basic needs and drives. It's just expressed in different ways. So, really, if you stop dehumanizing them, start treating them like humans, then they're gonna go on and act like humans and whatever once they're no longer in prison, like once they get back out. So, because that's the point of prison in the first place, rehabilitation, right? So that's why sentences aren't life every single time you commit a crime, because the hope is that eventually you get out and then you rejoin and become a decent member of society. That's the point, right? So why are we setting it up so that they just can't? Thanks for watching.